All right, guys, it's true crime time again. I'm Ryan Nix.
And I'm Taylor Lynch.
And we're your hosts for Pure Malice, a true crime podcast. The information shared in this podcast or on this website is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The host will not be held responsible for any misled interpretations of this content. The opinions and views expressed are those of the host and guest and should not be considered advice. We cannot guarantee the accuracy of any statements from guests or the sufficiency of the information. Are you ready to lose weight and keep it off? At Vital Flow Aesthetics and Wellness, we offer powerful, medically supervised weight loss solutions using semaglutide and tirzepatide, the same game-changing medications making headlines across the country. Our expert team will guide you every step of the way so you can achieve real results safely and confidently. Feel better, look better, live better. Call Vital Flow Aesthetics and Wellness today at 254-310-7131 and start your transformation. Vital Flow, where wellness meets results. This is Ryan.
And this is Taylor. And remember, it's not just crime,
It's Pure Malice. So I don't know if y'all happened to see the girl who got pulled over and officers noticed a smell coming from her car and they made her pull out everything from her car. And she had a body stuffed in a suitcase, stuffed in trash bags, wrapped in blankets after trash bags.
No. Not a body. A baby's body.
Correct.
A child.
I'm sure eventually we'll cover that, but not yet.
Yeah, there seemed like there was a lot to untie there.
Definitely.
Very complex dynamics and stuff. And maybe undiagnosed, maybe diagnosed mental health. I don't know. Sad.
It is sad.
We forgot a really important update, y'all.
What?
We're going to talk about Toothless and Fancy. They are my children's bearded dragons. They, like bearded dragons, it's really hard to sex them.
It's really hard to determine the sex of them. Oh my God. Woo, okay.
Okay, it's very Herman. It's very hard to determine
There we
what their gender is. Toothless, obviously, when we first got him, he's a boy, but he's not.
They thought he was a boy.
Okay, we were hopeful he would be a boy, but he's extremely docile and just chill. Look at him looking up.
I was about to say he heard us talking. Yep. Hi, bud.
Anyways, he is actually a she, but we're too far into this. We can't change names. We don't want to anyways.
No.
I just needed y'all to know that Toothless is no longer a boy. Toothless is now a girl. Fancy, who is more aggressive.
Sassy.
Yeah, she's extremely sassy. Well, she is not a she. She is a he, which would also make sense because apparently the males are a little more aggressive. What do you call it?
Dominant.
Yeah, they're more dominant. They flare up more. And that dragon is I'm determined it's not going to bite me.
Guys, he, Fancy, has yet to flare up at me, doesn't bite at me when I feed him.
He literally just got done flaring at me the whole time. I tried to stick my hand in there just to get a piece of a worm.
I talk to him before I enter his cage, though. I talk to him. I make sure he sees me.
Oh, look at him eating a salad over there. Good. Oh. Also, football season is about to start, which means my farmer's market
days
are going to be messed with. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To send somebody to go get me dragon food because we've been getting their greens at local farmer's market here in town, and they absolutely love them. So
he's chowing down right now.
Yeah, he really is. He specifically likes arugula. Don't come at me, y'all, because he's not supposed to have it daily because he has it daily, and I looked it up and they said that it was fine. And then he enjoys some sunflower leaves.
Cute. All right.
That's our lizard update.
They really are cool, guys.
We'll post a picture. Ryan was trying to get a picture with me and Toothless earlier, and I was like, please don't do that to that poor dragon because he's shedding right now, and it hurts to help them peel it. Toothless had some rocks that I don't know if they like that pronoun.
They.
There we go. Anyways.
All right, guys. It's true crime time again. We hope that you've had a great week. So last week, we covered the first part of the Vanishing Triangle. So, for those of you who were not here last week, Taylor's going to go ahead and give a quick recap.
All right. So we already covered the first 3 victims in the first episode, but here's a quick recap for those of you just tuning in. In the previous episode, we covered the first 3 women of Ireland's Vanishing Triangle case. Annie McCarrick vanished on March 26, 1993 at 26 years old. An American living in Dublin, Annie loved Ireland and was building her life there. So that day, she had run errands, left some groceries on her counter, and headed out for a walk in the Wicklow Mountains. She was last confirmed on a bus to Enniskerry, with possibly later sightings involving a mysterious man, later identified as a former IRA hitman. Despite extensive searches, no trace of her was ever found. Then we moved on to Jojo Dallard. She was 21, disappeared on November 9th, 1995. After missing her bus home from Dublin, she hitchhiked part of the way, calling her flatmate from a phone booth before getting into a dark Toyota Carina with at least 2 men inside. The witnesses had later described a woman matching her description being forced back into the car, and the case remains unsolved despite renewed investigation in 2019. So then we moved on to Fiona Pender, 25, 7 months pregnant, and went missing from her Tullamore flat on August 23rd, 1996. She was last seen at home with her partner. A witness later reported seeing 2 men loading a large carpet-wrapped object. Sorry, a walrus. Carpet-wrapped object into a car that morning. So years later, a chilling handmade cross claiming to mark her grave turned up in the mountains, but searches found nothing. So all 3 cases were part of Operation Trace, which was a task force formed in 1998 to investigate 6 linked disappearances of women believed to be victims of a sexual predator. So in part 2, we'll cover the remaining cases, the prime suspect, Larry Murphy, and the disturbing theories that still haunt Ireland today.
All right. So, like Taylor said, we left you with the name Larry Murphy. Larry Murphy was a savage rapist and pedophile who was kind of trolling around the area. So, now we're going to discuss the 4th girl that went missing, who was 17-year-old Kira Breen, who, by the way, is the youngest of all the victims up to this point. She was last seen on February 13th of 1997 in her bedroom, just like the last victim, Fiona. Her mother went to check on her at around 1 a.m. and she wasn't there. So her mother, Bernadette, noticed that the window in the living room was slightly opened, so she assumed that Kira had snuck out to hang out with friends in the middle of the night. Because 1, she was 17. I mean, maybe not everyone snuck out when they were 17. Obviously, Taylor did not. That would be me. Terrible. But 2, she had also briefly run away one time in 1995 with a friend whenever she was 15. So the police were called and it was taken seriously. So that's a good thing. They did search in 1995, but she ended up showing back up a few days later. So according to the book by Alan Bailey, Missing Presumed, after that incident, she seemed to have gotten it out of her system. She realized, wow, I'm really sorry that I did that. And she kind of took it down a level. So her mom waited up all night for her to come home because she assumed that she'd come crawling back through that window, but she never did. At 9 a.m., there was still no sign of her. But Burnett had a doctor's appointment that morning where she actually ended up learning that she had cancer. And after that appointment, there was still no Kira. So the Guard Eye was contacted. The Guard Eye is like their version of police, FYI. The Popo, the Guard, not near as good. So obviously it was a big deal, that a 17-year-old girl went missing from her bedroom. But it's an even bigger deal at this point in time because there was actually a group of pedophiles that were roaming the area of Dundalk, the area where they lived. One of them was a woman, and she had been trying to lure children and teens into sex work. And apparently the Guard Eye had been investigating this. and they actually had evidence that Kira's group of friends had been targeted before. So she had a big group of friends, and they always went out to restaurants and other places. And this group of pedophiles would stand off in the background and watch them. So a few things kind of stuck out whenever they went over everything. She had run away before, but this time it didn't really make sense. Kira knew that her mother had a doctor's appointment that morning, and she knew that it could end up being a serious diagnosis. They had a nice night together the evening before. They went out to dinner. They came home, they watched a movie together, and they did this as a way to kind of ease her mom's mind about the doctor's appointment the next morning. So it just seemed unlikely that she would have left her mom alone for that. Another big event was also supposed to be happening in the next few days that her family didn't think she would miss. And that event was that she was supposed to be meeting her biological father for the first time in her life. She was excited about it, so there was a lot happening that she wouldn't have wanted to miss. There was a massive search, including a forensic search of her bedroom, but nothing was discovered other than the fact that the window was opened from the inside and her fingerprints were the only ones found, which means that she did leave willingly. Her key to the house was found under the window outside, so it appeared that she had accidentally dropped it while she was exiting the window. So, no signs of forced entry, no signs of a struggle. Initial investigators on the case spoke to her friends and family, who all gave statements and said that she had snuck out the night before. They also asked if they had seen her with anyone or talking to anyone in the days leading up to her disappearing, and nothing ever came from it until 2 years later, which is whenever Trace, the task force, was established and came into the picture, and they started really digging deep into anything, including those interviews and statements. They said, listen, this is a close group. There's got to be something here. So they went back through everything. My thoughts are that if you do have a big friend group, even if you have a small one, there's at least one of those friends that probably knows what you were up to. So Kira and her friends had gone to a cafe the day before, a place that they hung out a lot. And there was an older guy who was there all the time. And he was there the day before whenever the friend group went. So to most of the group, he came off very creepy. But they said that Kira had a crush on him and that he seemed to like her. They said that day they heard him ask Kira to hang out with him, and she told him that that evening she would sneak out of her house after her mom went to bed. So when Trace talked to the initial investigators about why this wasn't looked into further, the investigators basically told them that her friends had been involved in some petty thefts and they just weren't credible. So they didn't believe them and they just dismissed it. I feel like that still should have been looked into. So whenever Trace went back to the group, who are all a little older now, and said, hey, we would like to ask you the same questions and get your statements, and all of the stories that they got from that group of friends were the exact same. Nothing made it better or worse, just the exact same answers as they'd given before. So finally, they were able to convince the initial investigators that there was a good case to arrest this older man, who, by the way, they never released the name of, but they wanted to arrest him for the murder of Kira Breen, even though they didn't have a body. But they ended up having to use a weird case as precedent to arrest him on. The case they ended up using was the murder of Captain Robert Nerick by IRA member Liam Townsman. So he was arrested on September 12th of 1999. They could only hold him for 12 hours because they didn't have anything. But during those 12 hours, they interrogated him in every way and they used every tactic that they had in their book. And the older guy actually completely denied even knowing Kira. Everyone was saying that he knew her. And in fact, in the book by Alan Bailey, he said that near Kira's home, there was a wall that was spray painted with this guy's name, Loves Kira. So he stuck to his story that he didn't know her, and they ended up having to let him walk. There were some reports that he possibly died of a drug overdose later, and many people strongly believe that he was the guy responsible for at least Kira's murder, but he was able to walk away from that clear and free. In August of 2015, investigators started searching specific marshlands in the area because there were 2 witnesses that said that they saw Kira close to them on the evening that she went missing. And then 2 anonymous letters were received by police stating that police should search that area for her body. However, nothing came from it. And who knows, maybe someone sent them to mislead investigators. Maybe something was missed in those searches of the marshlands, because those types of areas are extremely hard to search. But again, another case where nothing was ever found to help the case, and there's still not a single trace of this poor girl. So the 5th girl to go missing was Fiona Sinnott. At the age of 19, she went missing on February 9th of 1998. She was a single mom of an 11-month-old daughter named Emma, and she was living in southwest Wexford in a little village called Broadway. She was living alone and taking care of her child. She was known to be very responsible, independent, and it was said that she loved being a mom. Even though her family and her didn't speak every day, she had a great relationship with her family, and they lived nearby. So apparently, before moving into her own place, she was in a very abusive relationship with her daughter's father, Sean Carroll, who was about 10 years older than her. The police knew the place that she and Sean had lived together because they were there so many times. She'd been admitted to the hospital many times due to Sean. And in the book by Alan Bailey, he says in regards to one of those incidents that she told a number of friends a harrowing story involving vicious and prolonged sexual abuse that this man had subjected her to while she was heavily pregnant. He also said that he has personally read with Revolution the various reports containing this particular assault and can honestly say that if even only half of what he read was true, then her assailant should be stood trial for and should never again have been accepted back into normal society. He then said that the attack bordered on barbaric. So he's definitely a possibility for a suspect. So the night that she went missing, she'd gone to a pub called Butler's with 3 of her friends. Baby Emma stayed with Sean's parents. It was known that she wanted Emma to have a relationship with both sets of grandparents, even though Sean was not good to her. Throughout the night, her friends noticed that she kept wincing in pain, and she said that her upper chest and arm hurt, but she wouldn't really say what was causing the pain. But she did say that she was going to the doctor the next morning. So during the evening, her ex, Sean, came up to the pub. He wasn't there to hang out with the friend group. He didn't acknowledge Fiona, and she didn't acknowledge him. He sat and drank alone all night long. A driver driving by that area later that night said that he saw a couple standing on the road arguing after the pub had closed, and someone else who lived nearby said that they heard a female scream around the same time. Her friends say that Fiona left the pub whenever it closed and that she'd planned to walk home because she lived pretty close. They also said that she and Sean didn't live together, but that he left shortly after she did. On February 18th, 10 days later, her father, Patrick, reported her missing. And this is why earlier we mentioned that her and her family were close, but that they didn't speak every day. Because I feel like most people are like, oh my God, why'd you wait so long? We just say that because that was a thing for a lot of people during this case, is why did they wait so long? How'd you not know she was missing? They were close, but they did not talk every day, guys. However, something that's odd is that her daughter, Emma, was with Sean's parents the entire time. And wouldn't you think that they might think to check and see, hey, where's Fiona? We haven't heard from her in 10 days. Or reach out to someone in her family and say, hey, where's Fiona? We've got the baby and she was supposed to be back. But ultimately, it seems like they did not care. They were just like, Emma's with us, so whatever. They actually think that this was all set up to look as if Fiona abandoned her daughter. So investigators talk to Sean and they say, hey, you followed her out of the pub that night and you have your daughter. Sean said, I met her friends outside of the pub. We talked a little bit. I walked her home. He then said that he slept on the couch because she was complaining of arm and chest pain. And so he said he was worried about that. She told him that she had a doctor's appointment the next morning. So the next morning around 9 a.m., his mother came and picked him up at Fiona's home. And then they went back to the grandparents' house where Emma was. Just FYI, they have pretty much cut Fiona's parents off from Emma completely at this point. We'll get into that more, but so investigators did a search of Fiona's home, and for the most part, things seemed in order. No evidence of foul play. However, there was one big thing, which is that the house was almost completely empty, as if no one had ever lived there. There were no personal belongings in the home. There was nothing in the home of personal nature. Investigators start speaking to other people, and they're asking, did Fiona not have anything in that house? And people who had visited her said that there was always stuff everywhere and that she was actually known to be a very messy person. So her disappearance was all over the news, and they included the information about the apartment being completely cleaned out. A farmer in the area contacted authorities and said that before the disappearance went public, he was checking on his cattle and he noticed that someone had dumped a ton of black garbage bags in a ditch on his property. He said that this happened often where people would come by and dump things illegally on his property, so he just planned to burn it and get rid of all of it. But he happened to open one of the bags to make sure that it wasn't anything valuable. And inside the bag, he found medication containers with the name Fiona Sinnott on them. So this was all of her stuff, and it fell in that 10-day period of when she went missing. So whenever investigators spoke to the friends about Sean, there was another story that spoke to the kind of person that he was. She had met an English truck driver a few days before she disappeared, and they'd hit it off, and she spent the evening with him in the cab of his truck. Sean found out, and he went to the cab of the truck, started banging and screaming for her to get out. She didn't, and he finally left. So when investigators spoke to the truck driver, he confirmed that series of events and told them that the expression on Fiona's face whenever he showed up was complete terror. He said he had never seen someone's face look like that. She seemed to have been paralyzed in fear. So people do say that this is what caused all of the other events to unfold. This is what caused everything to kind of really start spiraling. The investigators didn't have anything tying Sean to her case, but Sean also had a lot of drug charges on him. He had a little gang that continued to get in trouble for drugs. So whenever his gang was arrested for these drug charges, they were also asked about Fiona's disappearance. All of them basically pled the fifth, saying, I wasn't arrested on these charges, so I don't have to speak on it. So, well versed, I guess. So, in September of 2008, Fiona's family and friends held a memorial ceremony for her at Our Lady's Island Cemetery because she was officially declared dead. They put a plaque up for her the day before the memorial so that it could be revealed at the memorial. And whenever they went to reveal it, the plaque was gone. Tacky. It's for the people who are still alive and left without her, you know. Investigators believe that the killer or someone involved stole the plaque. And one of the guys they arrested, who was part of Sean's inner circle, said that he was starting to crack and talk about how he did this. He helped cover it up. He couldn't take it anymore. And so that guy actually ended up dying of an overdose and never did reveal the things that he knew to investigators. So they never found Fiona. So this brings us to our sixth missing girl. Her name was Deidre Jacob, and she went missing on July 28th of 1998. She was 18 years old, and she was going to college in London at St. Mary's University with an end goal of becoming a teacher. She was home with her parents for the summer at the time that she went missing. She was last seen walking in through the front gates of her parents' home on July 28th of 1998 and was never seen again. She'd been in Newbridge doing things around town that day. She visited her grandmother, Bridget O'Grady, and was specifically in town that day to get a bank draft so that she could secure her apartment in London for her second year of college. She left around 3:02 p.m., and she called her grandma on her way back just to check in again. It was about a 25-minute walk from town to her house, and she walked it all the time. She was seen by between 8 to 10 people who confirmed seeing her walk home. 6 of those people knew her personally, and several spoke to her or waved to her, so they know it was her for sure. There was also CCTV footage to confirm that she was walking around town that day, that she went to the bank when she did, and that she had used the phone. She was wearing a navy blue shirt, blue jeans, Nike sneakers, and a black messenger-style bag with CAT in yellow letters on it. Her bag was very distinctive, and people kind of honed in on it. So her mother returned home from work around 6 o'clock that night, and Deidre wasn't home. Her mom was immediately concerned because her daughter said that she'd be home around 3:30 or 4. Her parents called the police pretty quickly, and the police started working on their investigation right away. A ton of rumors started circulating, and tips about her being seen started coming in, but most of them were not helpful. Then one sighting came in that intrigued investigators, and it still does. A man called into the Shannonside Northern Sound radio station and said he was driving a truck in the area that day that Deidre went missing, and he said that he saw her on the side of the road. He met her whenever she was hitchhiking near the county of Kildare. He stopped and asked if she needed a ride. He asked where she was going and said that he could probably get her there. He was going in that direction, so she agreed. She was going to Carrick-McCross, so he drove her there and he dropped her off. He called into the radio station 10 times trying to make sure that he could tell them this. He also wrote a 4-page letter detailing this and sent it in to the Line Star Leader and newspaper. So he also said, I don't know where she was, and I'm telling you, she didn't go straight home. She was in Carrick-McCross, and Deidre had spent time there recently with friends. Her family went there many times, passing out her photo, asking people if anyone had information, and nobody came forward with any. The truck driver refused to identify himself, so on January 9th of 1999, Trace decided that the only way to get him to come forward was to release a recording of his call via the Guard Press office. Apparently, he had a very thick Northern Ireland accent, and tons of people, like hundreds of them, called in to say that they knew who it was. They said that he lived in the village of Fermanagh in Northern Ireland, but he lived in a different jurisdiction, so Trace could not extradite him over the border just to interview him. So they had to be creative in ways to get him there. They found out through investigative work that he shopped at a local supermarket in Monaghan's at certain times every week. So they waited on the Irish side of the border and they picked him up whenever he entered the Ireland side of the border to go grocery shopping. They interviewed him and he eventually admitted that he was the one who called, but I lied about the entire thing and said that he had an alibi and it did check out. What a psycho. Who does that? What a waste of everyone's time and effort and hope and all the things. He said that he lost his young daughter in a car accident and he felt responsible for it. And he thought that if he could give this false account, that it would give her family hope that she was still alive. So while it's a sweet thought, I guess, it's also extremely cruel. The mother and sister of Deidre were concerned for the well-being of this man. They weren't mad, just mainly concerned. So nothing happened after this for a while. It went pretty cold, but then a brutal sexual assault occurred close to where Deidre was last seen, and it was tied to Larry Murphy. So in 2001, he was convicted of an abduction, sexual assault, turned attempted murder. So we will talk about this case after. We're going to come back to this, guys. He was serving time at Arbor Hill Prison. The prison is weird, and it lets a lot of prisoners socialize and kind of hang out. It's just a different kind of system than, I guess, what we have here. They get kitchen privileges, and whenever they get kitchen privileges, there's an infamous brew that they make of their own vodka. They often sit around, get drunk, and kind of spill everything to each other. So one night in 2011, Larry talked about his involvement in Deidre's disappearance. He and another inmate started going head to head, trying to one-up each other with the crimes that they'd committed but didn't get caught for. And Larry is suddenly talking about how he abducted a young girl near Newbridge a few years ago. He said he went out driving around and was specifically hunting for a girl to abduct. He said that he put some children's toys in the back seat of his car, and he had a car seat back there because he did have children. But he said that whenever he would sprawl toys in the back of the car, it made females who looked in his car automatically feel like, hey, this must be a good guy. It's okay to get in the car with him. I would be safe here. He said that he pulled up beside a young girl on the road where Deidre had been walking, and he used a map to wave out the front passenger seat side and told her that he needed help getting somewhere. When she moved closer to the window, he said he grabbed her hair and roughly drug her into the car. He then shoved her face and head into the floorboard and took a hammer and knocked her unconscious. I told you, brutal. He then drove her to a secluded area, sexually assaulted her, and killed her, and then dumped her body somewhere. The inmate that Larry told this to was already serving a life sentence and decided that he had nothing to lose. So he went ahead and told. So whenever Trace spoke with him, they made it very clear to him that he would get absolutely nothing for coming forward with this information. And the inmate said, "That's okay, I'm fine with that." So Trace then told him, "You may even get targeted for coming forward with this information by other inmates." And he said, even if he was killed for it, he had to say it. So he went on to say, "I have a daughter, and I obviously can't protect her from inside of prison. But if this man gets out and can do it again, I will fear for my daughter." So they took his word on this information because they believed that this inmate had nothing to gain from it. And because if you look at what Larry said, it fits perfectly almost with his usual MO. So we're going to go ahead and talk about one of Larry's cases, and it is a tough one. It does involve rape. So again, trigger warning. On February 11th of 2000, Larry's 28-year-old victim, who is not identified in any of this, left her business, which is also left out as well, at night in Carlowtown. She was walking a short distance from her shop to the parking garage where her car was parked. Larry had been stalking and watching her for some time, so he knew her routine. He knew that she parked in the same spot every single time, walked the same walk, and had planned everything out to a T. He told his pregnant wife that he had an appointment, so she wouldn't have to worry about him being late for work. And he also had 2 sons at home. So he parks his car with his child's car seat in the back outside of the garage. He had a plan as to how it would go down and what he would do. She got into the garage and walked to her car, and Larry came up behind her out of nowhere. He screamed at her to hand over her purse, and she pulled it away. She was not going to give it up. And he punched her in the face, breaking her nose immediately. She fell backwards, and he pushed her into his car, and then he pushed her face in the floorboard of the passenger seat. He then ripped off her bra while blood was pouring from her nose and tied her hands with her own bra. He then took off her shoes. And in the book by Alan Bailey, he mentions that he thinks that this is a vulnerability thing because if you think about it, if you don't have on your shoes, you have a harder time getting away. So he then drove her car to his car and transferred her from her car to his trunk. She was screaming in the trunk, so he turned up the radio as loud as it would go to drown her out. He drove her to a secluded dirt road, ripped off all of her clothes, threw her in the passenger seat, and then brutally raped her. Whenever he was done, he put her still naked in the trunk and then drove off again to a place called Spinnan's Cross in Kilranaway Woods. Wow. He then drug her by her hair to the passenger seat, and this time he sodomized her and forced her to perform oral sex on him. Ugh. She said that she was terrified of him because he seemed extremely unhinged and violent, and that she was just waiting for him to kill her, so she stopped resisting and just complied to his wishes. And this tactic worked. He tried to cuddle with her after he raped her, and then he just started talking to her about his life and opening up to her. It's so strange. Ugh. The victim said she believed that he was telling her these things because, like Taylor said, he planned to kill her. Then he started asking her questions, and then he got very angry again out of nowhere and tried to drag her back to the trunk. but she was able to free her hands, and she grabbed a can of spray paint from the trunk and sprayed it directly into his eyes. But nothing came out of the spray can because she wasn't able to shake it up first. So, needless to say, at this point, Larry was beyond mad, and so he shoved her back into the trunk. He places a plastic bag over her head and is trying to suffocate her. So, she swings her legs over the side of the trunk to try and get up. And while he's strangling her with the bag over her head, takes the door of the trunk and slams it on her legs over and over again. Ugh. Ugh. And I just had flashes. Ugh, terrible. Ugh. She starts losing consciousness at this point, and then suddenly a car appears and shines headlights on them. So he throws her on the ground naked with a plastic bag over her head and jumps in his car and flees the scene. So 2 men get out of the car. They basically said that they saw this going on. They thought at first that it was just a couple arguing and then realized that it appeared to be very violent. So they went over to intervene. And this is what they found. So she sees these 2 men, and she was thinking in her head that he brought more men to come and help assault her. The men had to chase after her while they're screaming, "We're here to help you," just over and over until she finally got tangled in branches. And so they were able to catch up to her, and she finally went with them. So these 2 men saved her life, no doubt. They took her to the hospital and they were able to help her identify Larry because they had seen him. So these 2 men had also known Larry from around and they could positively ID him. When he was arrested for this at his home, his wife Mags asked what's going on. And he looked at her and he said, "I raped a girl last night." As if it were nothing, completely nonchalant, like it was no big deal. And then he was escorted out. So he later said that the first time he raped this woman was rape, but that the second location, it was no longer rape because she stopped resisting. So it was consensual lovemaking the second round. He got 15 years for this, but he ended up only serving 10. He is free, and he was thought to be living there. The Gardaí are monitoring him and are prepping to possibly arrest him for Deidre's murder as of 2020. They were able to go back and go over everything further and gather more, and they believe that he could also be involved in Annie McCurrick's disappearance, as well as Jojo Dollard and possibly 4 others. They were digitally enhancing the CCTV footage of Deidre from the day that she went missing. They haven't released the findings, but it looks like they may have caught Larry on that footage. The final findings of the new investigation recommend Larry to be arrested for murder, and they have been turned into the Director of Public Prosecutions, and they will be the ones who determine if they have grounds to arrest him for the murder of Deidre. I think that Larry did this, at least to Deidre, just from the research that we have done, and possibly, yes, a few more. Now, whenever it comes to Annie McCurrick, I'm interested to see what they actually find involving Larry, because I think that it's more plausible that the IRA guy is responsible for her. The good thing is that Trace is still actively looking into each of these, but that is it for today's case. I'm Ryan Nix.
And I'm Taylor Lynch.
And we're your hosts for Pure Malice, a true crime podcast. The information shared in this podcast or on this website is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The host will not be held responsible for any misled interpretations of this content. The opinions and views expressed are those of the host and guest and should not be considered advice. We cannot guarantee the accuracy of any statements from guests or the sufficiency of the information.